Welcome back to Anime Savants, everyone. This week I am Suleta Mercury.
Oh, see, I was going to say the same thing. However, and it don't matter. No, we could do the same, but I think this week, I know the name of this character, and it aired this week, but they have not revealed the name. So I'm just going to say the dog from Spy Family.
Okay. I mean, TikTok didn't ruin that shit for me, so I already know his name. But yeah. I know what you're talking about. Okay. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I mean, so do you want to do the what we watched first, and then we'll hop into
that should be pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Spy Family came back. How'd you like it?
I'm very excited for it, and also I felt like the last core ended with like a tease, but didn't kind of like end on a hard note. So the fact that we kind of got right into the story with the assassination plot was a lot of fun. Obviously, like most of or maybe half the episode was just resetting, giving us like a new story to follow. Anya wants a dog, so we get like lots of cute animal stuff. I laughed my ass off when the dogs in the first shop were like, "How'd that dog have a six-pack? How'd that happen?"
Yeah.
And
the
I'm mad
spy
they were
dogs, like
flexing, showing off.
That one tail hitting the ground.
When he was in the back, it was just wham.
Yeah.
Wham, yeah.
But I also love how like Anya's commentary in the background, where she's like, Anya doesn't like any of these.
Yes.
Just like perfect.
She was out on those dogs. That was fun. The excuse that Lloyd made to get out of there. He's just, I was suddenly gonna have diarrhea, and they just dipped.
And they think that he still has diarrhea throughout all this shit happening. So I'm just like, oh man, just on brand.
And I think what really like attached me to this episode of all things was Yor's constant reaction to the deterioration of the situation. Like her facial expressions just got me bugging, like all the time. Had me bugging. Like when she realized that like Anya was gone, and then like the face that she made before she jumped up to the ceiling, it was just like I got a good cackle out of that one. Obviously the stuff with the terrorists and the dogs is absurd, but it's also like funny in its own way, tragic in its own other way. Lloyd doing kind of all of his tricks in this episode, including dressing up as the terrorist leader for like 5 seconds and then berating his boss. Like, you try to get me to do this shit with like a few minutes of footage. Like, I could have fucked all this up. Like, y'all really flying fast and loose today. And then Anya's interaction with the dog were great as they both try to figure each other out. And when you see a character that you know is coming, but obviously I'm not reading, so I'm just going off of what the hints they were dropping by the end of last season. You always wonder, does the dynamic hold up of the show and the storytelling? I'm telling you right now, that dog fits right in. So I really enjoyed this episode. What did you think?
I loved it. I mean, from your thinking that she was being sex trafficked into being like a child bride.
The little noise Anya made in her own mind. Was
Starlight Anya coming back. And then the theme, that was the thing though, I love the theme of like, the moment I saw Starlight Anya, I was like, it's about to go to shit. Because the last time she did Starlight Anya, it was a fucking like sweeping defeat. So it's just like...
it didn't work.
It didn't work. They were going in circles. And I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. It's perfect. But I did like that, the size difference allows her to ride the dog, and also like the other like sci-fi element that gets added into it, where the dog can't specifically speak, but it can like let her know through her telepathy what it's seeing and what is going on. So I enjoyed that aspect. Yor's reactions. I honestly enjoyed Anya more than anyone this episode, because she acted literally like a child would if they were to go to like an animal event like that. Like, there was a point where she was frozen from the overstimulation. She was just like, I don't know what to fucking do. Like, oh my God.
It's like dogs, yay, kitties, yay,
bunnies,
rabbits,
I was like, no, that's literally a kid they'll run to everywhere, and then they'll be like, I can't decide what to do. And then there's either crying or, I'm gonna hyper focus on this one thing and then cry about not getting to do the rest later. Like it's just on brand. I loved how the dog had its bark is bigger than its bite.
Definitely.
That motherfucker was like rah rah rah. That nigga picked that pole up, went behind Anya. I was like, oh my god.
The dog's VA was having a time with that character. Let me tell you, because the way they have him do his little barks, it's not like a dog. It's sort of like it's literally a person playing a dog playing a person.
Yeah.
So the noise, the sound of the dog is making kind of matches the cadence of speech.
Yes.
But it's not saying anything because it's a dog, and they don't imply that the dog can speak. It's just a very intelligent dog that also can see the future. And then because Anya can read its mind, I guess it's sophisticated enough, a creature for her to actually get something out of the mind reading. They do have a way of communicating that's both verbal and nonverbal, but it's in that weird way that this show has done a lot of things where, like, for example, like, because Anya can read Lloyd's mind, she's able to come up on the spot and reinforce his deception to get out and go do spy stuff. But they're not actually communicating to each other.
Yeah.
It's just her matching his energy. The Anya the dog is like a little different because they actually kind of are communicating to each other, but the way that a child would talk to an animal, like we do this all the time with animals. We like, you're like, I have a cat. My cat does something stupid. I yell at that cat like it's a person.
Yeah.
Right. But as far as the cat is concerned, it's just me being loud, right, and aggressive. They don't know that I'm like, or I'll come downstairs and I'll just look at her and be like, "You're fat. You're fat." She doesn't know what the fuck is going on. It doesn't hurt her feelings.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean? Like, I could berate this animal all day, and it's like whatever. Like, it's just making noises. Whereas like Anya and the dog, because the dog is intelligent and they're kind of working together, there is kind of a real two-way communication. But then also he's still a dog and she's also still like a 6-year-old. So it kind of goes nowhere.
The range is limited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, especially enough for black people. Black people talk to their pets like they are children. Like they are actual humans. So yeah.
Now you know what you did. No, he doesn't know.
Yeah, they don't know. And that's why they're barking back at you, because they're just like, oh, are we playing?
Yeah. Oh, you're being loud? I could be loud? Let's go.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved the whole episode. I also just really enjoyed the pacing. I feel like a lot went down in the episode. Yeah. And they did do the like, oh, this is what's going on and this is what's happening. But it's unlike My Hero Academia's previous season, not this season. I didn't watch a new season's episode yet. But in previous seasons of My Hero Academia, they would waste like a whole fucking episode going through like old shit and then put filler in the end. I'd be like, we didn't need this. You could have just kept it going. Like, everyone's here for what we're here for. And they did that. They literally set up the dog stuff at the end of the last episode from last season. So I feel like now if someone were to discover Spy X Family and watch it all the way through, it wouldn't even seem like there's a seasonal break, because it makes sense going from the end of the previous episode into this. Like, it just keeps it moving. There's no, oh, we're going to update you guys on where everyone is at. No, she got the Stella. She's getting a dog. Next.
Right. Yeah, so they basically rolled right into the story and didn't bother with a ton. I mean, there was like, the 30-second sort of recap, but that's about it. And typically, the show doesn't do a lot of aggressive recapping. It's normally in the context of a character remembering a thing that occurred with somebody else. So you'll get like maybe a quick scene, but and again, like I read a little bit of the manga in the beginning, and then I just said, okay, I'm happy to enjoy the show as it comes out after that. But I got the feeling also in the manga that there wasn't a lot of recapping either. So it feels like they're keeping a very similar pace as well. But I can't, confirm or deny how much they are stretching some things out, because obviously there's material that is being left to the side. My presumption is that if they were leaving some stuff out, it's probably to do with like additional scenes with the wise people, because the island castle little couple of chapters, I believe there was more to it than just like the quick oh, Lloyd explains to the rest of like his people that this is really a mission. Like I think there was a little bit more um explanation and more interaction like with his boss. So I'm willing to believe that maybe they're cutting things like that down a bit. But yeah, the pacing is really, really good. I also watched the first episode of Witch from Mercury.
Fuck
That's kind of like
yes.
required viewing for me. I
Yes.
did not have a strong idea of how they were going to open the story outside of the prologue. Prologue
Mm-hmm.
is obviously like very heavy on like Soleda's like backstory.
Yeah.
So you don't really even meet her character. You meet her as a baby, so it's not really what we're getting in
It's
the
building
main
up like the
season.
Gundam lore and things like
Correct,
that in
and
the
and all that
movies.
was all that's fine, and it's cool, and I'm a big mecha person, but I'm also the type of individual. It's like I don't think that's the most important part of any of these stories. The cool robots are supposed to just keep your eyes entertained while the actual like drama's going down, and
Mm-hmm.
they made it very clear from the very beginning that this is Gundam High School, okay, and I love it. I love the concept. I also like all of the surface level cues that they've taken from Revolutionary Girl Utena because this is like the
Everyone
lesbian.
is saying it.
This is the lesbian Gundam, so like they're going with it, and it's actually the exact same setup as the beginning of Utena. I'm saying Utena, but it's Utena. Like
Yeah.
it's the same setup with Miorine kind of as a stand-in for Anthe, even though if anyone knows how toxic Anthe and Utena's relationship is in that show, it's a good thing that they're only taking like the surface level stuff
Yeah.
because that other part is not great. But we can talk about that another time. I thought the animation still looked great. I'm curious now as to getting, ironically, more backstory as to what went down with Soletta in the intervening time.
So,
Because, go ahead, yes.
I didn't even know this myself, but apparently there's a novel that like is already doing the background stuff for that. I didn't know that. I found it out through a YouTube comment. But they didn't spoil what happened to me in the YouTube comment, but what I'm hoping is that they include the novel information into the show like eventually. That's what I would
Yeah,
like.
I'm just genuinely interested. There's some shows where I don't care about the backstory because it's the least engaging part of the show and how they would explain things. For example, like the last thing I want are just recaps, or the last thing I
Yeah.
want is a lot of exposition. But it is useful to know what relationships certain individuals have with others or with organizations or even the politics, just sprinkled out in a way that isn't boring. And I don't think that there's gonna be much of a problem with that. I mean, Gundam shows love their exposition, so to some degree,
Yeah.
I'm like ready for it. But I'm just now actually curious about it. Whether there's in other shows, I could care less, and they got to convince me. So there's that. Animation's great. I thought the music was actually pretty good.
The music was great. Yeah.
I was trying to pick out like what the main like repetitive theme was gonna be, but there's so much variety in the way they do like
There was kind of like
the
an EDM kind of thing playing when they were in the greenhouse area. And by the end of
yeah
it, I was like, I actually kind of enjoyed that because it went along with everything that happened in that entire scene from like the very beginning to what is it, Goel, like
yeah
destroying shit, and then the dual declaration and shit like that. I was like, wait, the track actually fit everything. Like it was great, but then there was also variation with everything else because I mean, you're not gonna have a space opera without a string instrumental. Like it's just not
right.
fucking happening.
It there's also like and I this is true in a lot of the alternate century timelines that Gundam goes to. It's true to like greater and lesser degrees, but you can kind of go, or they kind of go two different directions. One is to go very, very dramatic and serious, and the other is to go kind of goofy and over the top. And sometimes they do both. Sometimes, I think a perfect example is Gundam Wing, because on its surface it's very dramatic and serious with a bunch of emo boys talking about murdering
Oh,
people and blah blah blah. But when you actually
emo
watch it, so many
boys.
things that occur are just goofy as fuck. like niggas running around with masks on, like cackling, mustache twirling villains. Like it's all there.
Yeah.
You know, in this show. So aside from the Utena vibes, I also got G Gundam. I also got some Seed. So there's like little bits sprinkled in about the presentation that kind of lean more on the. They know this is over the top, and they know that there's a lot of parts of this are stupid, and they're just going with it. Like even the setup for the school. Like if you told me don't give me the name, but like the pitch is. We're doing, Gundam High School with a female main character who's going to be, like, dueling people every week while the rest of the plot goes on. I see G Gundam in that. I see over the top. I see people howling and screaming and extreme personalities all through the lens of, like, a school soap opera. Yeah. Which cannot be serious. Like, I don't care what anybody says about, it made me feel things. Maybe it does, but that's just not a set up for a serious show. And since it's not going to be overly serious, you should lean into goofier, over-the-top concepts. Like when you see the Gwell, Gart, whatever, the robot, it looks cool, but there's also large parts that are ridiculous. Like
the little poof, whatever the
little poof, what the fuck? Yeah. What do you mean space hair? What the fuck is this?
What does that do? It would be one thing if during battle those were like mini bits that all like flew out that bitch. No, it was literally just feathers.
But that also fits the personality of Gwell Jaturk, right? Like he's a very aggressive, over the top kind of. First of all, it's also like it's like a warm purple, like so that's his primary color. Like all these things visually communicate ideas that the show's going for, and I like all those ideas. I liked in G Gundam how the mobile suits were just ridiculous. They didn't try to explain why. Why does this robot have a fur mane? It doesn't matter why.
Huge arm pads.
Yeah, why? It doesn't matter why. It just does. And then you animate it well, and then everyone shuts the fuck up. So like that's what I feel like we're getting already. I think the Aerial Gundam is a very cool design. I'm pleased that they, Gundams in general have a very feminine appearance. Just because they are often the hero suit is slender and has a lot of like the body form that most people just visually associate with a more female shape. There's some notable exceptions in the history, even the UC series. Like if you go look at the GP0, 1, and 2, the complete like getting away from the old design, chunky, they call them Fat Gundam or whatever. Yeah. Like that's a look. Here they've managed to draw this interesting line where like the training suits you kind of see, they are bulky but everything feels rounder. The heads are round, the body shapes are rounded, and then they'll have these like blocky portions. Yeah, it gives
me Reconquista and G vibes.
100%. That's exactly where I was going. So we're telepathic. So there's a lot of influence of the more modern original Gundam designs that are in there. But because the lead is female, I like that they also resisted the push to make the Aerial Gundam more obviously feminine inspired. They don't need to do that because that's already true of the sort of generic Gundam designs from a lot of the AC stuff. Like even if you look at Iron Blooded Orphans, like the hero suits there all had, incredibly like slender looking body shapes. The CGI is very well covered, so I love that they incorporated that, especially for like they made beam weapons somehow feel more impactful. Like they made the beam bigger, they made everything like green and neon. The hits on some of these Gundam, I was asking myself in that first duel, how the fuck do they allow people to do this at this school? Because like easily anything could have gone wrong and then everybody would have died, right? Like the beam weapons are live.
Stray metal.
So Gundam High School is not a safe place to send the child or the children of all these fucking billionaires. Like that doesn't make any sense at all. But again,
also, the billionaires don't give a fuck about each other either because they try to kill each other. So
yeah, which brings me. Thank you for bringing that up because that brings me to fucking whatever Gel Jaturk's dad. Was it Derit or Delit? I don't know how the correct translation.
Yeah,
this nigga only works in the world of an absurd show like this because when we meet him, the very first thing he's doing is gutting and destroying a company that ostensibly belongs to his own industrial group because they didn't make profits. Like, if you use that lot, no business person would operate the.
And someone was like, "Oh, we can recover."
Yeah, he was like, "Nope, I only want success in my organization." It's like, nigga, you should be out of a job. You should be bankrupt right now. Like that. This only works because you and your company have plot armor. Like, the plot armor is on the money instead of the mobile suit. But he's our current sort of big bad. We see all the politics around him. We kind of got introduced to the other families that make up this like business consortium that are clearly like the sub bosses that our main characters are going to go through in order to get wherever they're going with the rest of the story. So taking them down via their children as proxies in a duel at Gundam High School is I understand the structure, so like just give me that, okay? That's all. I don't need anything else. They don't have to the floor of my enjoyment is already set, so I'm cool. And then he almost gets killed, but get blown up, but then his son loses the other guy's son, the whatever his name is, loses the duel. Yeah. So now magically his son isn't engaged anymore, which is a really stupid system that Delit put in place and doesn't give a fuck about, which again is silly.
And they know it's stupid. And I think the guy said something about while the duel system is in place for now. Right. So is it even permanent, or is it something recent before?
I don't know. It's fucking dumb, okay? But I like but again, that's not a criticism. Yes, that's not a criticism.
Yeah.
Big, loud, and dumb is how I generally prefer my television. Like, I need it to be stupid. I get worried when people have a stupid idea and then they try to take it very seriously. I worry about that because that's when dumb ideas can't hold up under the pressure of having to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I think we have a pretty clear conflict going forward because everyone was pretty discriminatory towards Suletta, and that will
there without even Gundam appearing.
Yeah, and my only question is how come nobody else sees this as obvious? Like, shouldn't Aerial Gundam, that design, just be known to everybody in these companies? Like, oh yeah, we passed a law getting rid of these things. So how the fuck could she just ride it into town? How did she get
admitted into school knowing that this was her mech? Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would imagine since the Delit company owned and were the ones who killed her parents and destroyed that other company they work for to stop it from existing, I would assume that the moment it showed up, it should be like, oh right, those people. Yeah. Let's just get rid of them right now. So there's gonna be a lot of plot-induced amnesia that will be played off like, oh, well, I didn't care what was going on there until I saw this image. And then, the things will kick into
which, in a way, kind of makes sense because wasn't the killing of that, or the genocide of that, station, wasn't that, co-op, underneath, it wasn't a planned thing. That guy did it, and then everyone found out about it afterwards. It was like, what the fuck? Why'd he do that?
Right. Yes.
That's what happened in the prologue. Yeah. So then I could believe that a shit ton of other people just don't know about it, especially their children.
Right.
And so of course it's gonna be a picture of that Gundam goes out into the universe once someone's like, oh, this bitch beat me up, and they're like, oh, it's this thing, blah blah blah.
So the one other influence that I noticed was also from Unicorn Gundam. Because I would actually argue that the setup for this plot is very, with respect to Suletta and Aerial Gundam being connected in that way, and that the machine kind of can take over or augments the abilities. That's essentially the plot of Unicorn Gundam and what the Unicorn Gundam is to Banager. That's the relationship between pilot and machine. There's one part about that I don't like, and I didn't like it in Unicorn either, which is that no matter how much stuff you put the main character through in stories like that, you kind of establish up front that they're not the missing piece to make like they're not an ace pilot. The cool part about a lot of the Gundam series main characters is that they're always portrayed as either professionals, geniuses, or extremely skilled as a result of life experience, and the machine is just an extension of them. In Unicorn, to some degree, because they had like new type stuff, so you could always like get over and say, "Oh, he's a powerful new type," whatever. But in this one, I just don't necessarily love the idea that the main character isn't presented as an ace pilot. I don't hate it, right? But like she's clearly relying on the system to do most of the work there, and her connection with it is unique. But I much prefer if they're gonna do the story that they want to tell and have like the Gundam stuff be attached to it for people like me to get excited. Why can't she just be a good pilot? That's it. I'm not throwing that out there for like controversy. It's just she could easily just be a Muro Ray, and then do all of the story stuff that they want to do, and whatever themes they want to hit outside of the suit. But in the suit, I kind of like my ace pilots to be ace pilots. Like Mikazuki is fucking awesome, right? Barbados is an awesome unit, no doubt. But they go out of their way to make it clear that Mikazuki is a fucking animal. And whenever he gets in that cockpit, you are ready for some hot shit to go down that you credit to him as a character. That's all I want from all my pilots. That's it, But if they don't want to go down that road immediately, fine. I would just like
maybe she'll have to earn it. That'll be
maybe. I just want Suletta to get that shine as another in a long line of sick ass Gundam pilots, and not just be like the girl Gundam pilot with the magical robot stuff that makes her overpowered. Because then the accomplishments of like what she's gonna have to go through, the trials, of all these other people gunning for the top, don't feel as earned as they could.
Yeah.
And that's a choice. So that's all. I'm just gonna leave it there. That's a choice.
Yeah. Agreed. I just really like that they have the duels because I think that's cool. I kept wondering, how are they going to get the build fighters and the build diver people?
The monster of the week.
Yeah, this is it. This is how you do it. Like perfect integration. I mean, we had it with G Gundam, but even so, like I feel like, the recency bias, like people are looking for that. They're going to be looking for that in this series, and it's there, like right out the gate. And also, wow, she fucked that nigga's suit up. My goodness. Yes. Oh my goodness. I love the bits. I loved how the bits came out immediately.
That shit's mad unfair though. She did an all-range attack on this nigga on day one. Like, come on.
To be honest, I thought she was going to make the bits into like a big ass sword and just chunk the nigga, but she did it. She just sliced and diced the shit up. Like I loved everything about it.
No, it's super cool. So if I say things that sound
so far.
Yeah, if I say things that sound negative, I'm not saying it like I didn't enjoy what I watched. I'm just pointing out that there are other ways to achieve things, and in my personal taste, I just like to see the main character be the driver of action. I don't like it when that's passed off to the magical device at all. I prefer that it just not be the case. A sidebar to all of that is that in a lot of those other shows, like a G Gundam, like Build Fighters, and so on, they work well because the staging of the action is very simple, whether it's a game or a duel or something else. Like, it's a very easy formula to work with. The only question I have is, so we've established now in episode 1 that Miorine is now married or engaged to Suletta because Suletta won this wacky ass duel where they changed combatants like 3 times in the duel. And then she says at the end, well, that's just the way the custom at the school works. But they never established what the stakes were going into it because whatever his name is, Gelt or whatever, all he said was, if I win, you leave the school. Yeah. That was the only thing that they established was, up for grabs. And so she was more like fighting for honor and, to put this guy in his place. Then Miorine jumps in and is like, actually, I'm stealing your suit and I'm just going to fight you because reasons. They never said like, if I win, I'm not married to you or not engaged to you anymore. Never said that. Okay. But the dude's like, all right, yeah, switch combatants is cool. Then she basically loses, and then Suletta is given a motorcycle and she rides into the fight, and he just stands there while she gets into the machine, has a long monologue, and then goes and fights him and then presses the win button and wins. So then they say, well, now the engagement is off because Miorine's ownership has been transferred to Suletta.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that mean now going forward that the stakes for every single duel is that whoever wins is now engaged to Miorine?
Yeah.
I don't know if I love that idea. Like,
that's what I'm getting from it. The fact, because she said what, she's the holder. So if you beat the holder, you become the holder. I feel like this has way more to do with who Miorine's parents are.
Exactly.
Like, because it's a political marriage. Like, she is an item. She's not a person in this universe.
So did Delit make Gundam High School as a way to get people to duel to marry his daughter from inside his own company? If that's the case, and I'm not saying that is like a horrible storyline concept, it's stupid, but it's the kind of stupid that like you need for stories like this. But if that is the case, why would they just allow random people to join the high school and participate in the duels if that's just part of the rules that are there?
Well, along the stupid line, they're probably just fucking arrogant as fuck because they're like, no one else has no one has access to the technology that the people that we do think will be able to get her do have access to. So that's probably where that's coming from.
Sure.
Which is
so
why Suletta's going to shake all the shit up.
I'm going to leave all of my canon questions at that. The only other thing I will say has nothing to do with like the actual events of the show. From just a writing point of view, one thing that I always am critical of is when you set up a scenario where the main character must win every single confrontation that they have. Otherwise, the story cracks apart. I hope that they're able to introduce some other mechanisms so that there can be real tension about Suletta not necessarily needing to overcome, that the story can continue if she were to lose.
I think she is going to lose because I think that thing that she said about like what her mom taught her is that like, you know, taking one step back, taking two steps forward and things like that. And like, you know, there's like learning and loss. I feel like she's definitely going to lose because she's going to have to learn how to accept loss. And then that's just going to be the dual part. And then I'm pretty sure the series is going to skyrocket outside of the school.
I presume that like that there's like all things, you know, there's a hard cutoff where we jump ahead into the future and then it's like the real fight, whatever the revolution is going to happen. But I'm just pointing that out from like a narrative writing point of view, where if your hero, if this is like also commercial art too. So commercial art, you want to deliver what the audience wants. There's certain feelings that you want to push onto them, and you want to give it to them in a way that they can repetitively enjoy the same thing over and over again. So there's that need to do stuff like that. And then there's like the storytelling part where I would like there to be cases where the stakes for winning and losing are either different or lower. So we're not constantly playing hot potato with Miorine's character. It would be nice if like they could get themselves out of this particular like lockstep that these two characters have to be in together, so that both of them can do things, achieve things, and fail at things without the fundamental core of the plot having to like colossally shift one way or the other. Like, it's good for episode 1, the surprise of like, okay, I'm now your bride. Okay, cool, we're good, that's awesome. I don't need that tension again until we get like a very good villain whose motivations align with needing, you know, maybe access to the company or whatever being the holder provides. Between then and now, we just need to separate those two I don't know, that stake from those characters a little bit. If they don't do it, I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be like, these writers, they don't know what they're doing. No, it's just, it would open up room to do a lot more, especially if Suletta's character is not a genius pilot. If she's just a girl who is good at some things, but has to learn, then it would be nice if she could lose, and then you could have real tension. Is she going to win? Rather than, oh, she has to win, otherwise the plot breaks. That's usually a bad sign if that's why you can't have any variety in what happens. So I've said my piece about that. We'll check back in, on that bit maybe halfway through the season and see what they've done.
Okay. I watched Reincarnated as a Sword. Enjoyed the first episode. Definitely not the highest budget thingamabob. A decent use of CG. I actually like how they intersperse the CG with the sword. But I just really enjoy the show because it's just the MMORPG aspects of it. The majority of the episode had nothing to do with the lolly girl. It was primarily him learning about the systems that govern the world, and he can be equipped by people, and how does the skill level up system work? Is he able to combine skills? How do you level up skills, etc., etc.? How are monsters defeated? Are you able to absorb things from monsters? Things like that. And then you have the very end where they link up and things happen, and at one point I thought they were going to do the forced downgrade thing where he became so powerful on his own that through an inexperienced person equipping him, it would dull down all of his powers. But that didn't happen, really. She basically was able to equip his own things, but then they have an overarching goal where there are different races in the world that can evolve, and he himself has evolved as a sword several times before he even met the girl. But for some particular reason, her race can't evolve. So that's kind of the primary plot point of the story is he says, I'm going to teach you how to fight, and we're going to and I'm going to help you be the first person of your race to evolve. So I'm like, okay, great. You established it. We're going on. And also, it's really fucking gory. Within the first 3 minutes, someone beamed the little girl in the back of the head with a big ass rock, and she fell down in a pool of blood. So I'm just like, okay. So they're not really going to shy away. And then when the climax moment of the episode happened with a two-headed bear, they didn't shy away. Niggas were getting torn in half. They animated everything. Niggas was getting stomped out by the claws. Bodies sliced in three. I'm like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. But that's juxtaposed with, the comedy that the sword gives off. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this... I will be back. I don't know if I'll be back every week, but I will be back. Because it was interesting. It wasn't just oh, this is just fucking more isekai trash. I'm just like, no, you established, the two characters. You established what are the problems and what are they trying to solve. We have meaning for the journey. Let's see where it fucking goes. So, yeah. I'll watch it again. What else did I watch? I also watched the Villainess Tames, the Demon Lord. Really fucking enjoyed the shit. Oh my god. I just gotta say that I think the show does a really good job with characterizing its characters. First of all, it's not a high budget show either. It's very generic looking in certain places. But then also you can tell the frames where they put the money in. You can tell oh, the romance scene, or oh, when she makes a certain face. I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys really cared about this part. But my favorite thing is that the girl who got reincarnated, she recognizes when she gets reincarnated, and she recognizes the moment that she's in. And it was one of those moments where, when someone's trying to, they do something to rile you up, and you would be well within your rights to be riled up, but if you gave them the response that they wanted, you look like the villain no matter what. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing started with her basically being like, I'm not going to give you what you want. And that pissed off the do-good prince to infinity. And so in the end, it automatically swapped the two, where she came in and she's the villain in this world, but because of what she did, the prince is so fucking mad that he's turning into the villain himself. It's great. It's I love it. The Demon Lord stuff, it's funny. The little demon minions, it's funny. Different storylines catapult things, but I think a lot of it is just the prince feels jilted and he feels pissed, and he's actively fucking her over. He's actively going out. He's firing her friends from their jobs. He's like bankrupting her companies and shit like that her family built up. Her family does not give a fuck about her because she's the only woman to be born to the family. She has 3 older brothers that the family put all the resources into. So I'm like, all of this makes sense. Like, it makes sense why these people are mad. It makes sense why the prince is mad, because even though we didn't see the series beforehand, up until the point where the girl got reincarnated into the body, the girl was the villain. So she did do all the fucked up shit to the heroine. So it's very easy to basically be like, I understand why, because you feel like, you got to get back at this bitch because like she really treated the girl so wrong and other people wrong. But then also the fact that from that time where she gracefully bowed out and was like, cool, you don't want to marry me anymore? I'm out of here. She didn't do anything else. And she hasn't done anything else, but you are dead set on continually villainizing her no matter what happens. Even if she's not even doing anything, he's making up situations to like point the blame on her. So I'm loving it. And of course, like the Demon Lord has powers and things like that. And he's not like malicious with it, but the comedy, the romanticism, the drama, it all flows very well. It's pretty simple, it's straightforward, and it's engaging, and that's kind of really all I could ask for. Like, I wasn't really expecting like an off the wall iconic rom-com. I was expecting a rom-com, and that's what they're giving. So I enjoyed it. First 2 episodes, they were great. What else was there? I feel like I watched something else. Or did much else come out? I watched the final episode of Made in Abyss.
I was going to ask about that one. Well, the double episode.
The double episode. Jesus fucking Christ. For a minute, I was like, oh, okay, like things are happening. We didn't get any explanation on what was going on in Fapata's eyes. I was like, we're just not. But of course, Fapata doesn't even know what's going on in her eyes.
No,
so I'm
she
like,
don't know.
Whatever.
So who's there to say?
Yeah. So I was like, hey, y'all ain't gonna figure that shit out. But the village, the sage dude, he set up so much shit in his like parting Wazukan, where he was just like, he was like, the deeper you go, the more you're gonna have to learn how to like enjoy your happiness, but also accept your despair, because there is despair down there. Like you are walking into the pits of despair, and I'm not just talking about darkness. So I'm just like, well, you didn't set that shit up. It's just, of course, it's not gonna get any better. But I'm just like, god damn. The whole time I wanted Fapata to join the crew. She did join the crew. I was like, okay, great. This is the one thing I wanted from the season. So we got that. But I foolishly thought, I was like, wow, we've made it through so much stuff. Blah blah blah. Like, no one's gotten hurt yet. I really was, and I was so afraid the whole time of Rico getting fucking hurt or deformed or something like that. And the plot was like, nah, she has plot armor to an extent. Like
she's the heroine.
She's the heroine.
And also, you gotta think, before you go further, you have to think about, if you disfigure Rico, that's permanent. So that has to mark a real fundamental change in that character, whatever that is. Whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because her experience so far, it's not that she's been untouched. It's that even in this episode at the end, when she's asked like, is it worth it to go through all of this to get to the bottom and find out all the answers that you want? She don't hesitate.
No.
She's like, yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And until that changes, I think the physical part of the cost of going down will not be borne by her. Because everyone else who's had a physical change, it also marks a big change in their own view of the world and life and being alive and being in the abyss. Like, it was one thing, and then event happens, and then it's something very, very different. And I don't think even that Rico's character, I don't want to say like it can't happen, because I don't know, but like I would suspect that any change that happens would be at the end.
Yeah, it would be at the So,
but I don't know that.
I feel like they're probably even nowhere near the end anyways right now.
No.
But, yeah.
No, they're not.
But that, I was just like, oh, things are going fine. This is happening. Blah, 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 blah. And then Vueko gets to those fucking steps. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then they show a bloodied, disfigured foot. And I'm like, oh, the curse. The curse is inside the fucking village. And then what do they show? A big-ass hole in the wall. And I'm just like, the curse is in there. I was like, we can't see it because Nanachi's not there, but the curse is in there. And then they proceed to have this bitch melt.
Yup.
Like eyeball falling out, blood pooling, da 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 da. And so then you have her old friend come and throw her down the stairs. I was just like, but you could have just killed her ass with that. You don't know where her bones are at. And then the friend, of course, because the village is disappearing, just disappears into nothingness. Which in the end, I was like, wow, like all that shit that Rico was like, oh yeah, we're gonna find a way to make sure that you guys can continue the journey and blah 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 blah. And it's like, no, this is it. Like, this is it. They all had to pay in some form or fashion.
And they all knew that.
And they knew that. They got basically an extended lease on life in the village.
Where they kind of got to live in a way that was, I don't want to say like the hedonism and the sort of gluttony and the very basic the like the basic way in which they had drawn themselves down to just their most extreme desires is the sort of thing that only exists in a dream, which is kind of what the village always was.
Yeah.
So And
I guess maybe my like one thing that I was missing out on was like some kind of communication or finality from Irumyuui. And but I also think that them not getting that was necessary for Faputa's development.
Yes.
Like Faputa needed to figure it out herself. She didn't need Irumyuui to basically be like, okay, well, I only gave birth to you for this. So girl, like, what you gonna do now? Because that probably would have made shit worse. It was
also that's how it works in real life. You know?
Yeah. You don't get the finality a lot of the time.
No, even if someone told you, like, you know, you could have had a great childhood, a great family, and your parents or your mother could have told you, we always wanted you, and this is what we always dreamed for you, and it was always part of the plan. But the fact of the matter is that those are just words. Like, no one really has the answer to that stuff. Even your own parents have the answer why you're here, what you're here to do. Anything they tell you about that could be kind or cruel. It could be selfish. It could be magnanimous. It could be all these kind of things, but it ain't real. It's just the reality that you create and they create and everybody creates together. Because I know a lot of kids who feel like their purpose in life is to try to fulfill a bunch of shit their parents didn't do, and that certainly ain't the reason to be alive. So, yeah.
So I enjoyed that. So yeah, Vueko getting out of it unscathed. I was just like, I should have known this was coming. I should have known that your ass of all people was up for the chop block, because I was like, you're still the only. She was right. She was the only human. She was the only human left. So of course she got mangled. She got mangled. I mean, it was what it was. I did expect Nanachi to have a little bit of a bigger role after they did that whole scene where he showed up with Bailoff and things like that. But he didn't. He kind of was still like, you know, the minds of the thing where like we went inside his head and, you know, went through his processing of the events in his head. But that was kind of it. So I was kind of just like, okay, well, that is what it is. But now the team has two viable fighters. So I feel like that may change things, and also it may not do nothing once they get to the next level and they're just like, bitch, we still assed out. Like, we were barely making it. Oh my God. I like that Faputa is the connection to Prushka, and also that, like, clearly Prushka's soul and being is the flute. Is inside of the flute. Which makes me go back and think, like, well, Riko still has her mom's flute. So who the fuck soul or whatever is in that flute, and what's gonna happen? Question. What's gonna happen when Faputa's like, wait, bitch, you got another flute over here, and this nigga is like screaming, like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like, what's going on? Like, there's so many options that have been opened up due to Faputa's addition, which is great. If they're gonna get from what it looks like so far, someone's getting added to the party every layer now. So, which I feel like is necessary because, I mean, Rico and Reg, they couldn't really do that much going the way that they were going anyways. And then it makes me wonder also, even with like Bondrew's flute, it's like, is the soul, like, is there a soul in that flute anymore? Because I feel like it has to be because it still operates. It still operates the mechanism. So what it...
Probably.
you know what? That's one of the things about the show, though. We never will know a whole bunch of shit. There are a whole bunch of relics on the levels above them that they know nothing about. And they probably never will know anything about. So, it is what it is. All in all, great fucking second season. Wasn't as devastating as the Bondrewd arc, to me, personally.
Well, that's because all the bad stuff happened to characters that we kind of knew bad stuff was going to happen to.
Yeah.
Whether you, I don't know what anyone's expectations were going to the village, but they pretty much set up that there's a reckoning coming. The storms are coming to these motherfuckers. And it's just a question is like, what is it? How does it play out? And does anybody, does anybody make it? Whereas like when Bondrewd, and I think I said this when we were talking about the movie, which is that Bondrewd is the very first time that there's a villain whose role is to literally just be the villain, but is not going to get like comeuppance. It's not like, oh, we triumphed over Bondrewd, so that means everything he did is fixed again.
That nigga was right there when they went down. He was like, okay, so you got that body, but I'm still over here. And you didn't find the relic, so you couldn't destroy the relic. Like, nope. I'm still here. I'm still here. What are you going to do about it?
Just doing one of these. Like, hey, I'll see y'all later. And also,
literally, he might actually see them later. Like, that's what I'm afraid of.
He is also, if you really want to be real about it, he's the first actual evil person that Rico and Reg run into, who's just like, he doesn't care. It's not like mustache twirling either. He's like, I got my own shit that I'm doing. I'm not a good person. I'm gonna show you some horrible ass shit.
Yeah, he's chaotic evil.
Right, I'm gonna show you some shit that's so horrible. But the reason why I'm doing it is because
progress.
Progress. I'm just doing it. And by the way, you all only beat one body, and y'all can get the fuck out. Like I'm following. I'm watching y'all forever now. But this isn't. It's not personal. It's just like keep going. All right, bye bye.
Yeah. You're one.
And
you're
so
one little cog in
that's
the
the first. Yeah, and you don't realize that it's gonna go where it goes by the end. You're just thinking like, okay, I'm dangerously genre savvy. Here's the 3 ways this works out. Rico makes a friend, then the friend gets killed, and then she beats up Bondrewd and wins, right? And then we move on. Or maybe we get a new companion. This person finally another human being. Bondrewd loses, and that's all good. What probably wasn't on the menu was Rico's friend gets turned into a fucking cartridge with brains leaking out of it or whatever in a horrible experiment. Reg loses an arm, and then we kind of like sort of beat the boss, but then don't. And then he's like, "All right, I've learned enough. You all can go about your business." And you all gotta live with the horrible shit I just showed you. Like Reg getting dismembered,
and still having the arm just. Yeah.
You're right. This is a lot more straightforward where it's a tragedy going in. You're like, oh, okay, this is some pretty I won't say I've used the word basic too much, but this is a very understandable story structure with a beginning, middle, and an end. The Revenger. The only twist I think for me was that we got Faputa as like a character, like going forward. Yeah. Rather than just being like a device to get vengeance on the village, and it all kind of ties itself up neatly at the end. Maybe they all take each other out, or Reg learns a valuable lesson about family, and then they keep moving. So it was I think I said at the time, Bondrewd and that whole his arc, it's small. It's not particularly long. I think it is the most like gut punchy part of the series. Even though there's like worse things that happen to people or further on. Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll have probably like 3 or 4 years before we even get any of that worse stuff. So that'll be enough time to recuperate and, I'm not even really healing from anything in this arc. I mean, I expect the things to happen. They happened. I have questions. We got some answers. And, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But great season. Really enjoyed it. And Kevin Penkin, oh my god, fuck you, man. Like some of the times when those songs came in, I was like, holy shit. Like, and it's the vocal pieces in particular where I'm just like, when the vocal tracks come in, I'm like, oh, it's going to get bad. Here we fucking go. And I think there was like one new vocal track that I heard, I think during the finale, and I was like, well, this is just perfect. It was just perfect. And luckily we're getting more of him in Tower of God season 2. So I'm very much so looking to what he's going to add on to that soundtrack. Which, I mean, he could use the what he's already done so far for the series, but whatever he has to add, I'm just like, yes, please. Thank you so much. But yeah, I think that's all. That's all I watched. I didn't watch the ending of Danmachi, but apparently it's a split core season, so
it's not really an ending. I'm so sick of this shit. I'm not caught up, so I have nothing to add to whatever that might be.
Apparently niggas got mangled at the end, so I'm gonna catch up because like it's sticking true to the core of the series, the dungeon, shit going down in the dungeon. So shit went down apparently, and niggas was just like, yo, what the black? So I will be catching up to it, but I didn't catch up yet. But we'll see. I watched another episode or two of Black Summoner, and that was interesting. I actually enjoyed when he was like fighting the 3 like murderers or whatever before he fought the Skull Knight, and then the Skull Knight actually had like a story of its own where it was like, oh, I'm living for vengeance. Like I first of all, I'm gonna test you, but second of all, like I won't go with you unless like you help me get revenge on these elves. And I'm like, oh, this is actually not bad.
It's not bad.
But also what you were talking about with the CG and during the fight scene, I was like, oh, this is kind of awkward. Well, not with he and the Skull Knight, I was like, this is kind of weird to look at. Like,
yes. But they were trying something.
They were. It didn't look like bad, but I was kind of just like, it seemed as though the main character, he was moving too slow in the CG. Yes. While the Skull Knight's animation seemed way more like dynamic and like believable. But I feel like the slowness was palpable on the Skull Knight because he had all that armor and shit. While the MC basically just still had the same robe, the little like stick and shit like that. So I definitely see where you're coming from, where it's jarring for a moment. I was like, I don't know if I like this. Like, things are happening.
That's exactly my reaction. It was the same way.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I'm like, I don't know. This isn't good. So you start there.
Yeah.
But then you start thinking about, okay, well, creatively, what are they trying to do here? Because sometimes shows will just throw in CG because it's cheap and they need to save money. So it's more like, okay, we're going to fill the screen with CGI things because it's either doing it that way for X dollars or having it hand-drawn for a lot more dollars. And we just can't afford that. So this is what you're going to get to communicate the idea of what's going on. Then there's times when, like, you still need to save some money, but, like, somebody there, like a director, is like...
let's experiment.
Or at least like, they're like, okay, I've got a vision for how to do this, and with CGI, or do something with CGI, and then the implementation of it is hit or miss depending on what their experience is or how hard what they were trying to do was. And I'm usually way more accepting of the second case, even if it's shit. Like in the first case, I get it. It's just money. So I just ignore it most of the time. But in the second case, if someone's just trying something and it doesn't work, I'm usually not gonna like beat up on it.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, it's fucking garbage, it's trash. It's like, no, this was someone trying to do something creative and either they didn't have the skill yet to do it or the concept was flawed, but at least they tried to make something out of it. And I felt like the first time they used the CGI in that night, the Skull Knight fight, I was like, okay, I'll give them a pass, but you could tell they were trying to get certain types of scenes that you would see in like action movies or in other bigger budget affairs where like the camera is tracking around the main character as he's running in and he's going for a big slice, and then they'll cut to another view that would otherwise be difficult to hand animate of their time. I'm like, okay, they don't have the skills to pull off what they're trying to do here,
But they're
like
trying.
yeah, but like if it's a choice between this and probably something a lot worse of like, still images of him fighting the Skull Knight with like, some dialogue over the back of it and or on top of it.
Or him standing and doing a shit ton of dialogue mid-fight.
Yeah, like if those are my options, I'd much rather go for like try and fail at the other stuff. I watch a couple more episodes and they get a little more competent at what they try to do with the CGI, and it's not as doesn't take up like 10 minutes in an episode. So I don't know anything about how the series wound up being, but it kind of felt like if they had just combined everything they were doing here with maybe some of the better world building or power system building in a couple of the other sort of isekai shows that they had running, could either be Reincarnated Sage of the Second Class or my personal favorite Harem in a Labyrinth of Another World. If they'd taken maybe the world development and the systems from that, they could have really had a strong show that I would want to go back to. As it stood, it was like heavy in areas I didn't care about and light in areas I would have cared more about, and it very quickly became like a harem thing after like episode 5 or 6. So I was like, okay, that's for somebody else, it's not for me.
I think that's all I watched. So on to the big one. What did you finally watch?
Oh man,
the masses want to know.
Oh god. I watched me some Mushoku Tensei. I've been talking about it off and on. That I've been catching up episode by episode here and there. About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I just marathoned what I was missing, which wound up being about like a season and some change in a day. And I'm happy that I kind of watched it back to back. And it puts a lot of things in perspective. So I wanted to like give Jordan a shout out just for keeping me aware of sort of what the original reactions were, as well as the fact that it kind of predated a lot of other similar light novels that are in that.
Yeah.
I mean, isekai's been around forever, but there's like a certain collection of isekai ideas that were kind of first assembled in one place in Mushoku Tensei. So the first is the idea that the main character is like a schlubby loser, and like sometimes they're a neat, sometimes they're like a whatever. I guess this guy was both a neat and a pervert, but also was a bullied individual who had a lot of trauma. So there's a lot of like, I don't need to go into the other shows that have come since the light novel was written that kind of take that same structure. Also like the somewhat tabletop inspired power system and world building. I like the fact that it's not overtly gamified. That sort of came after as a result of, I want to say like, there were obviously other series, but like the Excel World and SAO timeline of content kind of affected a lot of other series in that way. They don't really have that. So in a lot of ways, when I'm watching it, it felt like a throwback to maybe the prototype of some other concepts that have since been run into the ground. And that's because even though it's currently being produced, it's a lot older than stuff. So that's like preamble. I very much enjoyed it. I may have enjoyed parts of it more having foreknowledge of like the controversy around them. I think one of the big ones is that you kind of have to accept it or not, is that Rudius is a pervert.
Yeah.
If you don't accept that and you don't accept that general vibe in the show, because it can be jarring in some cases if you're not prepared for it, I fully understand if your reaction to Mushoku Tensei is less than favorable on that aspect. Personally, I didn't care. It did not bother me in any meaningful way. In some ways, I think it humanized some otherwise like rote character archetypes, especially his dad, because the absurdity of some of the conversations that he was having with his own son just on their face was silly. And so adding that aspect of him being a womanizer, but not just having it played for laughs, having it have both real material consequences to the story that are important, and then also um, knowing when it can be a joke and when it needs to be addressed in a very serious way added way more than it took from the story. So so an example might be later on in the second season when we meet the father after the teleportation disaster,
Yeah.
and you sort of still see him in a way up to his old, his old tricks, surrounding
Yeah.
himself with like beautiful women and sort of being not quite a lech, but at least like it's clear that's why he picked some of these people up. But then recasting it. So like if he's behaving that way, but he's shabbier and he's sort of like the fire's gone out of him and he looks pitiful and pathetic and he's dealing with that. And then Rudy is dealing with that. And then the whole cast is dealing with that aspect. It takes something that would otherwise just be like a punchline and makes it useful for storytelling and for character development, for everybody's character development. It sounds like a silly thing to say because it's like, oh, the perversion was actually good for the plot. But like in reality, I think it's the handling of ideas like that show why this series
Stands
was as
out.
influential as it was, because you can see so many other similar stories or stories that were influenced by it picking up on that dynamic, but then instead of understanding either how to weave that back into a story in a natural way that's satisfying, they just amp it up to 11 and sort of like that's the joke, haha. It's that
He's
this
a
is perverted.
pervert.
It's the joke, but it was not actually
A
the
joke
joke.
in Mushoku. Yeah.
It wasn't.
I think
And
that the perviness and stuff is integral to Rudy because, like, Rudy's supposed to be a shitty person. Like, we're supposed to be seeing his journey of, like, realization that he's a shitty person. And that's a key part of it. So,
yeah. And not only is it a key part of it, it's one of those things where if you take it away, I don't think the story gets better. I don't think a lot of the, because that's always my test. My
no.
test is no matter what I feel about like a story or a proposition of the way the universe is going to work or a certain plot development, whether it's handled well or not in the in whatever I'm consuming, if I take that out, just remove it with a scalpel, like just cut off all the loose ends and take it out. How much do I lose from that experience or from the story? Or conversely, like does it make it better if we just removed all the, if let's say you took out a whole character,
I
does that
think
make the
I
go
think
ahead.
it would make it definitely a different story. But probably in a much like more cold and darker way because Rudy's extremely selfish.
Right.
So if he doesn't have like the pervertedness um within his character, a lot of like the moments where he does things for female characters or in female characters' best interest, they disappear.
Yeah.
Like they completely disappear. And those are some of the most pivotal things that or pivotal decisions that he makes in the series. And it's honestly where he's left off at the end of this shit, where it's just like you're like you and your attraction and your horniness and you're like how far are you willing to go are part of the
Right.
reasons why you are hurt in this
Yes.
moment. So
And it's also pretty complicated because this is sort of goes to another thing that I appreciate about the series as it's written, both in the light novel as well as the anime. The world building is very, very, very strong, and it is paced properly so that the world
yeah.
expands along with the needs of all of the characters in it to tell whatever their individual story is. You can see different extremes of this in, I would call, like derivative work. So you can see the upside and downside. So on one end of the extreme, you can have stories where you don't invest a lot in the world building at all because the hook of the story is really the character interaction. And normally, if that's very strong, then you can paper over details about how does this world function? Who are the prime movers? Why are things the way that they are? What is the history of a place and how does that history inform current events? Cultures, languages, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's not always necessary for that to be deep. But because doing the character development stuff is actually really hard, it's not an easy thing to write characters that are A, charismatic, B, connect with an audience, C, have natural chemistry both in the story and just as a, if you had two actors who were method acting and you stuck them in a room, how good would those actors have to be to extract interesting interactions out of them, right? It's hard to fucking do all that stuff. So a lot of times, like, world building in a whether it's fantasy or not winds up being really important. For example, let's just leave anime for a minute and look at like television shows, even television shows that you wouldn't think have a lot of like need for world building. Take something like Seinfeld, right? Ran for about 10 or 12 years, known for being this great comedy, launched a lot of careers of funny people. But how much of Seinfeld functions because we already know quite a bit about New York City, right? Obviously, a person who grew up in New York might understand a lot of the framing and the comedy, but 99%, oh, I won't say 99%, a large fraction of its audience has never stepped foot in New York City, doesn't know anything about New York City in the 90s, doesn't know anything about the culture, doesn't know anything about anything. They have to learn all of that through the show, and the show is informed by all of those assumptions about the place. If you take that away, if you say, well, Seinfeld's with funny people, you could put it anywhere. The answer is no, you could not, because if you remove it, you lose so much like depth to the comedy. So imagine having to do the same job, but without the crutch of what we would understand to be normal life in our reality. That's what fantasies of any kind have to do, is that they've got to rebuild all of that context. And so if you do it all at the beginning, like, they give you that intro crawl where they'll tell you something about, in this world there are kings and queens and goblins and magic and da-da-da. A lot of times they're just using, the authors, the writers, are using shorthand to other things that you, the audience, already know about from other series to fill in blanks that they're never going to write themselves. They're never going to describe those things. You got to do it in your own head. And then if the characters are not interesting or there's some failure at some other part of the story, the fact that there is no deep, continuous world building to fall back on means that the show falls apart. You can point to any number of shows, even this season. I would lump basically every one of the isekai adaptations, the new ones that we got, pretty much into that case. As like there's no world building or no serious world building, and if they're boring, then you're like, there's nothing else I want to know about this place. On the other hand, there are some series where like the world building is aggressive and overwhelming, and they give you a lot of it, except there's nothing interesting happening in the story to make you even care about the setting and everything else that's in it. So Mushoku Tensei, what it does is that through the first 6 episodes, you are confined essentially to the life and rules of one family. You don't even get what's going on in the village. The most that setting is giving you is that maybe there's a lot of farming, it's the middle of nowhere, there's some bullies, we never meet them again after like the episode where we are introduced to Sylphet, and then people come in from the outside, culminating in Rudius getting taken away by, what's the cat lady?
Elaine.
Yeah, Ghislaine. Ghislaine, who's awesome. And at that moment, the audience is blindsided by that because you've gotten so comfortable in this place with these characters and these dynamics. And then literally somebody shows up out of nowhere, grabs the main character, knocks him out, puts him in a cart. And the next time we're introduced to the world, we are given so much more context. We learn, okay, why was he living out there?
Who is his family?
Right. Who is his family? What are the politics inside of that family that have sort of led him to be in this situation that he's in right now? So now you've gone from a small town like Rudy, the real character, to this brand new place full of new things that you don't know anything about, and he has to learn them, and the audience has to learn them very quickly, because without knowing that knowledge, he won't be able to overcome his next trial, which turns out to be Eris, who I really hated, and on purpose. That's what they wanted. They wanted her character to be abrasive and shitty all the way through the first season. But it also meant that, like, you, the audience, came to turn around on her at the same pace that Rudy did. A lot of other series what they do is that they give you the main character who's like a sympathetic person, and then they introduce you to the tsundere hot girl who you just want to fuck, and she's developed as a shitty person all the way. Like she's like at a, you know, if there's 9 stages of growth, or 10 stages of growth, she's at stage 9 when you meet her.
Yeah.
And you know, and then the triumph is just that by the end of things, she likes the main character, and therefore she likes you as the audience insert into the main character. By the end of season 1, I mean, Eris has kind of like come around to being like nicer to Rudy, but she's still just a shitty person.
Spoiled brat.
Spoiled brat, shitty person. It takes almost all of season 2 where we learn so much about her motivations. She is independently put through all kinds of horrible life experiences. Horrible ones, right? And by the time you get to the events at the end, where she cuts off her hair, she fucks Rudy, and like dips on him, she's introduced to the fact that her whole family is dead. Every time the world expands, the characters expand, they happen at the moment that our main cast also is thrust into a unfathomable situation they're not prepared for. It doesn't happen before, or it doesn't happen before, it doesn't happen after, it happens at the same time. So that's the thing at the end of the day that I took away from Mushoku Tensei, is that it is a very strong lesson in how to keep everything, every detail about a story in sync with all the other details, such that you never go too far ahead and you're never lagging too far behind. The characters develop at the correct pace to keep track of where the story needs to be. Revelations that are you can see coming a mile away are held until the appropriate time, wherein the impactfulness that they're going to have on the story is maximized. And then we have the characters go through all the things that the audience would go through at, you know, or rather the audience would expect to go through. So if Rudy is kind of stuck in a hole, the audience is stuck in a hole. If Rudy is like filled with like passion about, you know, expanding the world that he understands and acts in, the audience is given the cues to be at the same place. And I like where the end of the season winds up, because I heard some people complain, oh, well, it's like they reset everything and it's like right back to the beginning and all the growth that he went through.
Okay.
I've seen it. My point of view is that it's a much more mature way to handle things that are otherwise hard to write around. And it's taken with a lot of seriousness. None of the important things happen frivolously, even though they're tropey as fuck on purpose. So I really enjoyed it. I would say that all end to end, the production is really good. And then like the storytelling is great. And the characterization is great. And anything that's like questionable as far as like creative decisions on the part of the author are just that. They're just creative decisions. And I don't really look much more deeply into things than that. Because everything has a payoff, which is what you need if you're going to do wacky and silly things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow, I'm glad you enjoyed your time with it. Because it really does have like a very polarizing effect on people. Like some people are like, I'm dialed in, and other people are just like, I can't believe you watched that filth, that trash. Oh my God. I've seen so many times where like when big things happen, people are like, I'm done with this fucking series. I can't stand this shit. I'm just like, that's what made you decide to stop watching? I was like, have you watched all the other shit that you watched? Like, do you even have a sense of like what is coming? Because you're right, it is tropey and you can see some things coming, but when they all happen at the perfect times where it's like maximized and like emotions are just everywhere. Like the whole confrontation between Rudy and his dad, that whole episode was just, I don't know, that was perfect. That confrontation, the silence of the entire scene, and even the one supporting character that we don't know nothing about, or the barkeep, it makes absolute sense that the barkeep is just like, I'm gonna give you all these drinks because
talk to your son.
Talk to your son, because if he walks out, like it's over. It's over.
And also, it's like, look at what your father is doing as well. Do you know what's funny about that? How did that episode start? Do you remember the first like quarter of that episode. It started
No.
with like Rudy thinking that he's rescuing someone from a kidnapping, so he becomes like the panty bandit, where he puts women's underwear on his head and breaks into the warehouse to rescue
Yeah.
the kid. Only, and then that leads to him the misunderstanding and the fight and him running into his dad again. That is like that kind of thing is both the genius of the writing, but also the inflection point for like people's critique of what the show is. Because if you don't find the balance in what that episode delivered from end to end, where it starts with something absurd and perverted and dumb, and then look at where you get to in the end, which is like one of the most evocative, emotional parts of the whole series, you know, with him and his father in that bar where their roles are so totally reversed as to what they were before, and then Rudy determining that the right thing to do here is to pretend like nothing, all the other stuff they had just gone through in that whole episode, that it didn't happen. Because if they don't do that, then there's no way that any of them can get what they have to get to grow in that moment. Like his father needs him to not hate him and needs him to not have a reason or have not said the things that he said the way that he did. And there's really, you know, if you're talking to a child, there's no way that can happen. But Rudy is actually an adult.
Yeah.
And so he understands eventually what he has to do, and is kind of sort of like teaching his father at the same time, but also receiving things from him that he never got from his own family. So that's a very complicated concept to even write around, let alone execute in the way that the show executes it and the author executed it, you know, in the light novel. I mean, what can I say? If you don't respect that, if you're so undone by the farce and the you know, the ecchi tones that the show will often play with, if that is preventing you from understanding just what a balancing act is going on, that you're right, the show isn't for you. It's not for you, but it's also not bad. It's just doing things that you don't appreciate. That's about it.
Alrighty. So, all right, let's just go on to news then. What do I only have two things for news. The eminence and shadows getting gacha game. I don't know why they're giving it one. Maybe that means that they see big potential money wise. That's great. And the Tact Op smartphone game is actually coming out after what happened with the anime. So that'll also be interesting to see if we get more of that. Actually, I'm not really sure where the anime ended off. I didn't finish that one. I only got like 5 episodes in.
There could be a continuation, but it does have a pretty
solid ending.
And yeah, there could be though.
Okay.
I'm just mad at the. I didn't rewatch the whole thing, but like I saw like maybe like 2 months ago, maybe 1 or 2 months ago, I had seen something with a character that I really liked that I just didn't get far. I think I stopped at like episode 6 or 7, whatever the episode was, where like they finally catch on to like the main villain's plan and they get ambushed in the woods. And like I stopped right there, but apparently like 2 episodes later is one of the illest fucking fights of the whole series.
Oh shit!
Which I never got around to, but I saw a clip and I loved it, so I went back and I like rewatched a few more episodes and then just the end. I think it's great. I think everyone should go watch it. I think it's actually good. It's a good series. No qualifications. There's a character who I believe dies that made me very upset because they were also, by the point that happened, my favorite thing about the series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's good. That's a good thing.
No,
if
yeah,
I feel something,
because the last time we checked in about it, you were like, "Yeah, I dropped it too." So I'm just like, "Okay,
yeah.
Well then, let me go on and scurry back over and see what you're talking about."
Yeah, there's a like if it was like a much longer running type of story, they had legs to do really amazing things with the power system and how they express that in the world.
Oh.
But they didn't ultimately get that deep into it because they had to get to the to
Yeah.
wrap up a lot of loose ends. But I respect what was happening over there. Let's just put it that way. I respect that.
Okay. Also, Bleach is going to Hulu, which
Ah!
is Disney.
Ah!
So shit happens.
Really? Yeah.
It happened. It's accessible and it's gonna be simulcast. That's all we could ask for.
That should be all you care about,
Yeah.
and maybe the dub. Maybe something about like if you care about the dub cast, which I never really watched it dubbed.
I watched it dubbed only, and then I started reading the manga. So,
but I loved Johnny Young Bosch. I think he's just a really awesome voice actor. So, he's doing Ichigo again. So it's like, all right,
cool. I mean, that's all I got for news. That was the only stuff that stood out to me.
There wasn't like a ton on my radar this week that wasn't, information about series that are coming not this season, but next season or next year. Yeah, aside from like the news about Bleach and Disney, it wasn't like not a lot was really on my radar. Yeah, so that's about it.
Cool. Well, then my recommendation for this week is Wotakoi, Love is Hard for an Otaku, because I rewatched it again for like the 12th time? I don't know. I fucking love that series. So, like, if you haven't watched it before, it's a rom-com series about weebs. Wait, not weebs, about geeky people. The weebs are part of it. But, geeky people in multiple facets of life. You got cosplayers, BL lovers, hardcore video game people, like, of varying levels. And it's literally just about, like, it's a workplace rom-com with actual adults. And it's funny, it's entertaining. The episodes are kind of like episodic. And I would like more of it. I would like more seasons of it. But if you haven't checked it out, Wotakoi, Love is Hard for an Otaku. I would even say go read it. I know a lot of people who still are like, they watched the anime and then they became current on the manga and they fucking love it even more. So, go watch or read Wotakoi.
Yeah, my recommendation is a anime from I guess from like a year ago today, actually. It ended, which is, and we talked a little bit about it, but we weren't following it when it was running, is Dungeon of the Black Company.
Oh, yeah.
So I think my take on it when I first saw it was I enjoyed pretty strongly the first 3 or 4 episodes, right? I think I watched at the time right up until they went to the brainwashing island, where the whole episode was like a metaphor about corporate culture and how all they want from you in Japan as like a worker in an office is to just become a clone of the guy next to you and follow, make sure you put every rule into your heart about what how the company wants you to act, regardless of whether it's good for the company, good for you, or good for anybody. And so that was like the first episode that was as much. It was literally like a pod episode, because it took the 2 leads at that point and literally put them on an island away from all the other characters, and then had them have like a story happen to them that then was wrapped up at the end with like the island getting blown up and then them coming back. So I think I stopped there, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because like I felt like it was becoming much more of a episodic show than what the first few episodes felt like, where they were like more serialized, where like the story was growing and evolving from episode to episode. So I was like, okay, I'm having a good time with this, but like there's plenty of other workplace allegory kind of comedies that do kind of the same thing, and so I could put this to the side, maybe come back later. I did in fact go back later. I haven't really talked about here, and I watched the rest of the series, and it's only 12 episodes, got 1 core. It's good. It's really good. So the serialized aspect came back in directly afterwards, and I got to give credit to both the writing of and the performance of Kinji's character. Kinji's the main character. And for those who don't remember, Dungeon of the Black Company is a NEET who had basically solved real estate investment in the real world, such that he had created a life for himself where he never had to work. He was rich and he had everything he wanted. He could just live in a penthouse and play video games and like fuck off, and like he didn't, because he was a legit genius when it came to managing small business. Gets transported to another fantasy world where he's forced to be enslaved by a mining company that extracts like crystals, which are kind of currency, kind of fuel from a dungeon. And so the whole concept is that the dungeons are monopolized not as like places that you go train and get strong, but actually corporate assets that are used to make money. And so he starts out in this massive debt, and the hook is supposed to be that he's using all of his scummy but highly effective business tactics to regain his like financial status and stability and so on. What happens very quickly though is that rather than being forced to work for a black company, which is what in Japan they call abusive corporations that treat their people very poorly, he winds up starting a company himself and is competing with the black company, or with around under, depending on where the story is at, to run them out of business and solve, get to the same level he was at when he was in his world, not having to work. He could just have everything. But the supporting cast is a lot stronger than you would think. The voice acting is also really good, and it's genuinely like the comedy doesn't stop even as the story goes into fucking outer space, like over the top crazy nonsense. And the finale was a lot of fun. So actually, I wanted whatever
Does it have like
mental
a
rating
finite?
I'd given it. Yes,
like...
it has a finite ending if they want it to end there, and if they want to come back to it, I believe it has 9 volumes, and so I don't think the anime covered all the material in the 9 volumes. It just got you to a place where it could go further or just be over. So I actually went back and watched it. I liked it. So I will actually recommend folks who may have passed on it last year. It's not that long. It is definitely funny, and they do some wild and crazy shit that you probably didn't see coming, and then has an ending that is definitive if you need it to be. So it was really cool. Dungeon of the Black Company.
Cool. All right. Well, that's all I got.
Yeah,
for this week. Alrighty.
We got a lot of premieres though. Between now and the week after.
It'll be Bleach time next week. Big old
Someone
Bleach.
tried to tell me that Bleach wasn't even like no one's gonna be checking for Bleach, bruh.
I think everyone's super focused on Chainsaw Man, which I mean, I guess I understand, but Chainsaw Man's only coming out one day a year. I mean, one day a week. So you can only gush about the episode for so long before you want something else. So, yeah. Niggas are going to be watching Bleach. What are you talking about? Oh, my God. What are they talking about? But if you haven't already, and you want to give us your opinions on things, you can find us on anime_savants on Twitter, and then anime regular savants on YouTube. Certain people have already found us. Instagram,
yeah, I was gonna say. yeah.
TikTok. Yeah, you can find us all over the place. Drop your comment. Drop your what do you think? If you disagree, let us know.
Yeah, and I will speak specifically to the I won't call them Chainsaw Man apologists because I actually agree with you guys. Don't worry.
Oh man, they were just.
I agree that the show is going to be big. The statement I've always clung to is that there's some people out there who are millionaires when they really could have been billionaires, which is to say that like something can be very successful and get a lot of attention, but we only get one world that we live in. So if it could have been, if it is big, I'm just saying it could have been bigger if they'd struck at a different time. If you'd ask me when I want to release my tentpole, acquisition for my studio that I spent the better part of 3 years, turning into what I think is a masterpiece. I don't think I want to release it at a time there's like 4 or 5 other big series competing directly in my face. I want to clear the deck. And if you think that I'm hating, I'm not hating. Movie studios do this all the time. And they also fuck it up all the time too. They've just spent $200 million on a war movie, and then the studio across the street, they got their war movie. They drop it within 2 weeks of each other, right? Because that's just a competition. I don't think it's controversial to just say that there was a period of time when the buzz that is hot now was peaking in a different way, and that, hey, you capitalize when you capitalize. I think it's late. We'll see what happens. Maybe Chainsaw Man will just blow everything else out of the water. We'll hear nothing about anything else for a whole year. People will be sweating over. That could happen. I'm just saying that there's a lot of competition, and this is a bad time to drop it. They had a big window. I think that window was fall, summer of last year, and there was other shit. So that's what it is.
And if YouTube let us post videos as responses, I would just responded to YouTube with the Sabo meme saying, "I'm not reading all of that shit." So
I did read. I'm not being mean. I think that
I read half of each of them, but then y'all posted like essays, man. Like, come on.
It's all good. It's all good. There's to the folks who are pointing out the popularity of the series. I agree with you. The series is very, very popular. I also think that when the anime drops, it's going to get more popular, and it deserves to be popular because it's very, very good. But the point I'm driving at is there is a window where it could be the most popular it possibly could be and get the most bang for its buck. And now I think if that peak was 100, we're kind of at 90 of where it could have been. That's it. There's nothing more complicated than that. So thank you all for the feedback. We appreciate it. There's no hate. It's all love. However, we only get the one test case that we've got. So we'll see how things go.
Indeed.
I guess we're done. Peace out.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.